Hello and welcome. My name's Sean and today I'm going to do a video for you on my review and opinions on the Ottobock M-Power prosthetic ankle or prosthetic foot, depending on what you like to call them. And just my general thoughts on it. I was lucky enough to be able to trial this foot for a couple of weeks over the Christmas break. So I've really got a chance to get used to it and understand it. And I thought I would share my opinions on it for others that might be considering purchasing one of these feet for themselves, as there's not really too much out there on these higher activity style prostheses from a user's point of view, beyond what the prosthetists might tell you. So I want to start off by prefacing this review with the kind of understanding that this foot was my idol foot, and it has been my goal foot for as long as I can remember. In fact, it was seeing the TED talk on this foot when it was called the Biom ankle before it became the M-Power ankle that really convinced me to have my amputation done in the first place. So there was a lot of preconceptions coming in from myself when I trialled this foot, and the kind of my opinion of it has shaped since then. I no longer have the foot with me, the trial is over, and I'm currently trialling other microprocessor feet to get a feel for what they behave like as well. And as such, some of my opinions will be relative to other microprocessor feet as well as the other feet that I use regularly. So a little bit of background on the M-Power ankle. So it's in the class of microprocessor feet, but I personally think that that's a misrepresentation because it's unique in its class in the sense that it's the only prosthetic foot on the market at the moment as of 2020 or 2021 that provides power into the walking gait. So what does that mean? So it means that the foot itself moves under power to assist you in walking. By contrast, the other microprocessor feet adjust level and resistances in order to make the ground that you're walking in feel more level. Now, yes, this foot does do that to some extent, but the main selling feature is this powered push-off, or powered add-on. So with that in mind, then the next thing I wanted to talk about was the first impression. So when I first put it on and actually took my first few steps in it. And for me, when I put it on initially, it felt underwhelming. I'd kind of got these preconceived notions in my head that when you put it on, you'd turn it on and it would propel you in the direction that you're going, and it would really kind of push you forwards. But actually, it's not designed to do that. It's designed to assist and level the differences in your walking gait. So actually, the input that it provides is very subtle. But that subtlety shows itself over a long period of time. So when I first put it on, I was disappointed because it was, to me, supposed to be this god-level foot, this foot that was nigh on human. And of course, that's not realistic and that's not what these things do. So for anyone that's kind of going in, trialling it, expecting that same kind of wow factor, it's not there. But that's not to say there's a reason. There's no reason for it to not be there. You can ramp it up and put it on absolute maximum power, but it doesn't feel comfortable. And so actually having just that subtle bit of push to help propel you is actually more valuable than an overpowering push, because if it pushes too much, it just raises your leg up. As an amputee, you're not used to having that sensation come through your foot, so it makes you feel more unstable. So actually when they lower the power, you feel more comfortable walking in it. So that was my first impressions of the foot, and as you can tell, my opinions of it have changed once I got to use it. Now I want to cover a little bit of the use cases for this foot, so what sorts of things it excels at, or what sorts of things you'd want to use it for. So the first thing that stands out as part of its remit is rough ground. So anything that's outside over mud, gravel, sand, anything that's uneven, i.e. not either hard floors in your house or tarmac outside. That's what this foot is designed for. So it's designed to give you a softened heel strike and then adjust angle as you step over the foot and then push you off. So over rough ground, it works great. And now that I've had a chance to try some of the other microprocessor feet that are available on the market, I can say that it does this reasonably well. I would almost go as far as say it's the best one I've trialled so far, but I don't want to rule out that there might be others that are better at it. So that's what it's there for. It's designed to give you that stability through rough ground. So if you don't do any walking outdoors over rough ground, this might not be the foot for you. The second thing that it excels at is slopes. So when you're going down slopes, unlike regular style passive feet, the ankle articulates and it softens the impact of your heel and really helps gently lower you down the slope. By contrast, when you're going uphill, it actually gives you more energy or more input than you would on flat ground, which propels you further up the slope, which is actually a really surprising feature. But it means that going up slopes are no longer tedious and difficult like they are the rest of the time. Is another thing. So if you do a lot of stairs or stair walking, then this foot's going to prove invaluable to you. The powered push-off doesn't just happen during walking. The kind of party piece of the foot is the fact that it has a separate mode for going upstairs. It takes a little bit of getting used to, and there is a technique to activating it. But once you've activated it, you kind of double step on the prosthetic, and it pushes you up the step. It gives you an extra boost that lifts you up the step. And it's one of those things that it's kind of, once you get used to it, you start using it more and more and more. And it's a really, really useful feature. For me, as an amputee, it meant I could go upstairs easily, holding things and not have to worry about kind of balance or things like that. And it gave me extra energy, so I didn't have to pull myself up the handrails like I used to if I was doing a lot of stairs or if I was holding heavy objects. But by contrast, going downstairs, this foot is bland, to put it mildly. It behaves like every other kind of ESR foot on the market. It has no bonus features for going downstairs. You kind of just put your foot on the edge of the step like you would a normal ESR foot, and you roll over it onto the next step below. But you know, it has a real specific goal, which is going up things, and that's where it stands out. So at its worst, and this is where I put it in its worst category, at its worst, which is going downstairs, it's no worse than any other foot. Now that's something to be said, isn't it? So how does it compare now that I've had a chance to try them all? Well, put simply, it blows the other feet out of the water. The other feet that I've trialled just don't have either the range of motion the Empower has, or if they do have the range of motion, they don't have the same kind of stability, or they sap energy. There's no real clear winner other than the Empower. And unfortunately, because of this, it does come with a hefty price tag. I won't tell you the exact cost because I'm sure it will vary from location to location, but we're talking I'd say reservedly tens of thousands of pounds, and that's many tens of thousands, not a few tens of thousands. To put it in contrast, the way it was described to me is the budget line of microprocessor feet are double the cost of a regular ESR foot. The midline microprocessors are double that cost again, and the Empower is double that cost again. So it is an expensive foot, but it's untouched in many ways in terms of its ability. And that's my general thoughts on it. Now there's a few other kind of nuances to this foot, something that just is worth mentioning. Firstly, the noise. I know the noise is a big detractor for many people. Personally, going into it, I was really looking forward to having the noise. It was described to me as sounding like a foot from Terminator, so I could sound like a Terminator. I really loved that, but it doesn't. For anyone that's a sci-fi fan, the closest I could think of in terms of robotics that it sounds like is it sounds more like the robots from iRobot. It's a very kind of electronics noise more than a kind of heavy industries noise, if that makes sense. That being said, if noise isn't something that bothers you, then don't worry about it. For anyone that wears a prosthesis full time, depending on the kind of suspension system you have, they all make some kind of noises. This is just a noise that's a new one to the mix. I noticed it when I was walking through the office. We have a relatively quiet office, and I could hear it, but when you get outside and there's kind of other people around, or there's traffic, things like that, you don't notice it anymore. The second point to cover is battery life. Another unique feature to this foot is the fact that it has removable batteries, which at the time I thought was a nuisance, but actually, having trialled feet now that don't have removable feet, I can see why it's really important. So the battery life, for my use, and I walk on average 5,000 steps a day, for my use I was changing the battery at lunchtime every day, because it wouldn't last a whole day, and I didn't want it to run out when I was taking it on the evening walk with the dog. So I changed it kind of lunchtime-ish. If I forgot, it didn't matter. I would swap them out semi-regularly, and then overnight I would charge both, just so that I had the ability to. This did mean I didn't have to bring the second battery with me, which was nice. So I left that at home for my current use, but if I wanted to take it with me, if I was going on a longer walk, I could. And then just one last point in regards to the kind of like bonus features or features of interest. It doesn't fit in shoes very easily. So for anyone that has a prosthesis, you will know how challenging putting on shoes is. But the M-Power has a slightly raised toe spring that sits just above the foot shell. So I particularly found it difficult to put shoes on, more than, say, some of my other feet. In part, that was because of the heel spring. In part, it was because the foot was rather full of componentry, and the weight of the foot, and the fact it moves. It actually kind of makes it difficult to put it in shoes. But if you've got like open top trainers, it fits in fine. You just need to really open them up and get them in a lot more smoothly. But if you wear slip-on shoes on a regular basis, and my office shoes are slip-on shoes, forget about it. Buy some other shoes would be the short stint, because you wouldn't want to not buy this limb and miss out on all these other features just for that one small annoyance. Another factor to consider for this foot is the weight. It is by far one of the heaviest feet available on the market, in part because of the componentry inside, but also because of the battery. So bear that in mind. However, when you're using the foot and it's powered, you don't notice the weight. When you're walking, because of the push-off, the weight kind of, you don't feel it. It doesn't come through. But if the leg runs out of battery, the weight is a lot. And I described it where I ran out of battery a few times on walks, and it felt like being in a car being put on limp home mode, where every step was just difficult because I'd lost the battery power, so I'd lost the power input, and it weighs a lot. So bear that in mind. For every other task, it does feel heavy. So when you're transferring to and from vehicles, it feels a little bit heavier. When you are kind of lifting it over things, it feels heavier. Or when you're picking it up in your hands to move it, it does feel heavier. But when you're using it and when it's powered, you don't really notice it. So for anyone that's concerned about the weight through walking, you don't notice it. In fact, it feels just as light as my ESR foot, in some ways lighter than the other microprocessor feet that I've tried. So that's my review of it. In kind of summary, I really recommend this foot, and I will personally be trying my very best to get my hands on one full time. I personally believe that it has a few features on it that are outdated. I know the model hasn't been updated for quite some years, and I hope a second model is just around the corner, but with these kind of things you never know, and as technology is constantly evolving, it'd be a shame to miss out on this foot because you're waiting for something bigger and better. Only you as an individual can decide whether or not the cost of the foot is worth the function that you'll use it for. But if you walk a lot, and that doesn't have to be a lot by able-bodied people standards, if you walk a lot by amputee standards, this is the foot for you. The walking that I was doing on it was the easiest walking I've ever done, post-amputation obviously, and it is at the moment the closest that I've ever trialled to a real foot. And yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Consider all elements before you decide to purchase it. Now, I've alluded to it throughout this video, but I am currently trialling other microprocessor feet, and I will be following up this video with future videos reviewing each of those in its own time. And just one last comment, this is not a paid promotion from Ottobock. I paid to do the trial myself for my own reasons and for my own kind of desire to understand how they work. So nothing that I'm saying in this video has been sponsored by Ottobock. All of it is my own opinion, and it's genuinely how I felt after using the foot. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the footage.